in the dirt politics is where we start today with member of the California State Assembly, Bryan is here. Also joining us, senior political reporter covering California politics at Politico, Melanie Mason. And with me at the table, lucky me, former Democratic Senator and MSNBC political analyst Claire McCaskill. It is good to see you all. Assemblymember Bryan, let's start with you. Explain exactly what it is that your legislative body acted on today and why you felt it was necessary.
Well, thank you for having me. Today, we sent a constitutional amendment to the voters of California so that on November 4th, they can decide whether we stand up to the power grab that's happening out of D.C. through Texas. It's not California Democrats drawing new maps. It's us empowering the voters of California to make that decision. And I believe strongly they will stand with us in this moment.
Assemblymember Bryan, Republican Assemblymember Carl DeMaio explained his position like this. Take a listen.
And they're using a lot of voters' distrust of Donald Trump and what's going on in Texas as the vehicle, the ruse to seize back power for politicians. That's what this is all about. It has nothing to do with the saving of democracy. I learned in kindergarten, like most people, that two wrongs don't make a right. And yet here you have Governor Gavin Newsom trying to eliminate what is the gold standard here in California.
Assemblymember, your evaluation of that point of view?
Pure hypocrisy. I chaired the Elections Committee for 2 years. I authored the Fair Maps Act, which called for drawing political boundaries without consideration for where politicians currently live. Republicans voted against it. I authored legislation calling for independent redistricting commissions for every single level of California government. Republicans voted against it. While they stand on hypocrisy, in this moment, we're standing on business.
Melanie, I want you to help me understand how all of this looks from Governor Newsom's perspective. It's not exactly popular, this redistricting effort. He seems committed to playing hardball. What is the calculus in his mind?
I think his calculus is that Democratic voters in the state of California and nationally can hold two thoughts in their head at the same time. And I think the first is that redistricting is, independent redistricting is very popular with Democrats in the state, in the country. Politico, along with UC Berkeley's Citron Center, we just had a poll out today that found that 70% of Democrats nationally like the idea of independent redistricting. But when it's framed to them as this is something that California has to do in response to what happened in Texas, in response to what has been set off by Trump, we see strong majorities of Democrats nationally liking the fact that Governor Newsom and California Democrats are pursuing that. So that's the bet that Newsom is making. He is saying, you know, we're no longer can we do the sort of two wrongs don't make a right philosophy, which I think has governed a lot of Democrats for a long time. And he is betting that Democrats and independents in the state, and who knows, maybe some Republicans, will agree with him and say, in this circumstance, we're going to put our personal feelings about independent redistricting aside and see this as a larger political fight.
Claire, do you think voters can hold both ideas in their head at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. It reminds me a little bit of Trump trying to reframe the war in Ukraine, that somehow Ukraine started it. Everybody knows who started the war in Ukraine. It was Russia. Everybody knows who started this. It was Donald Trump. Everybody knows he's the one who began a process of trying to put pressure on every Republican state that he can to change and rig the maps. And I'm glad Gavin Newsom is doing this. I think every single Democratic state should begin yesterday trying to redistrict and draw more Democratic districts. They're getting ready to take away a lot of black congressmen and women, a lot of congressmen and women of color in this country by busting up urban areas so that Republicans can win them. The way to get around that is to do the same thing to Republicans in Democratic states.
I am struck by your parallel there because this is, in fact, a march of aggression. I want you to take a listen to how Senator Jon Ossoff of Georgia described it just last night.
They are trying to lock in one-party rule in the United States, in large part because he's engaged in so much outright malfeasance and abuse and corruption that he can't afford to have a Democratic House that could investigate his misdeeds. So Democrats need to strike back. We have no time or luxury for high-minded hesitation.
Do you think he gets it right?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I think when Gavin Newsom says we need to punch the son, I'm not supposed to say that, but you quoted him, so I figure I get a pass.
Family
right?
program, Claire, but yes,
right?
Go ahead.
In the mouth, I like that. And I think Democrats across the country, and frankly, some independent voters too. And let's not take our eye off the ball there. These elections are going to be decided in these new districts that are not going to be heavily Republican or Democrat. I mean, some of the ones in California are going to be 4 or 5 points. The independent voters are going to make the call here. And I think they're offended at what Trump's doing. You can see his approval numbers among independent voters have tanked. So I really do think this is a smart thing to do, because if we don't do it, then they're going to keep going down this path of limiting the ability of Americans to really decide who represents them.
So, Assemblymember Melody, I want to ask you the same question, looking at two different sides of this. So, Assemblymember, for you, this is now a thing that Democrats in your state have to go out and sell. How do you sell this idea to voters?
Well, I think, as what's been talked about already, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And we're going to walk all the way to the polls on November 4th. We are tired of being the punching bag of this country, knowing that we give over $80 billion in federal taxes that we don't get back, knowing our $40 billion in disaster aid for Los Angeles has been denied, knowing that the big, beautiful scam impacts Californians in a disproportionately severe way. We are tired of bowing down to this administration. Now we're going to step up and we're going to fight back.
So, Melanie, let's talk about the other side of that. Do you have a sense yet of the effort that Republicans in California are going to make from a messaging perspective in the lead up to this vote?
What I think is so interesting about the opposition campaign is that there's effectively going to be two different opposition campaigns. And on one side, you're going to have kind of the good governance argument, right? The people who are arguing on the merits of these independent commissions. So we already know that Charlie Munger Jr., who's a big mega donor, he's already talked about committing $30 to $40 million. They're already dropping mail. I got a flyer in my mailbox yesterday about this. And this argument is purely on the good governance, independent redistricting, getting rid of partisan gerrymandering arguments. And then you're going to have sort of the national Republicans. And we anticipate that we're going to see a lot of efforts from the Republican National Committee, from President Trump's political operation, from former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who is already speaking to donors and talking about him wanting to muster quite an operation himself. And that is likely to be a more explicitly partisan effort to rally Trump's base, to get that, 38% or so of registered Republicans in the state and make sure that they turn out. Because remember, in a special election, this is likely going to be a low turnout race. And so it really is going to be a matter of whose base is feeling the most fired up, who are going to be the most reliable voters to come out in a time when most people are not plugged into politics.
Does it tell you anything that this is what it took to get Kevin McCarthy off the sidelines?
Yeah, listen, I got to tell you, I think Kevin McCarthy hasn't quite yet figured out he's not speaker anymore. I don't know what gives him the right to be organizing and being a leader in this regard. I guess because donors like him and he thinks he can raise the money. I don't think Kevin McCarthy is a particularly powerful person. I mean, I think, frankly, Arnold Schwarzenegger is more of a danger to this than Kevin McCarthy is. But I get back to this, that I think people will remember this. How badly do the people of California want to defeat Donald Trump writ large? Because it's a statewide vote. And I think that's really what this is going to come down to. And I think the representative ticking through the ways that he has tried to harm California. I mean, we all know how vengeful he is. And he has been very vengeful towards California. And I think Californians feel it. And, the irony is the red states, most of them are states that get more government money from the government than they give. Not California. Some of the biggest blue states are the ones that are supporting other states that don't have the tax base they have. So it's really unfair the way that Trump has treated California. And I think he's right. I think the people of California are going to rise up and say, hey, you want to do this? Well, we've got to vote, too, and we've got to say. And I hope they say it loud and clear.
I think what is so interesting about what we're watching transpire in part is it was easy to watch this as just a Texas story. And then it was easy for folks to say this is just a thing that's happening in California. But this is one of the final frontier fights for our democracy. And the fact that you see it popping up in Indiana, in New Jersey, I mean, it is now a fight that is everywhere. And it is interesting to me that you see Barack Obama really finding his voice in this conversation. I want to read you just a little bit of what he said. This was an address at the National Democratic Redistricting Committee this week. And I know we'd all love to hear it in Barack Obama's voice instead of mine, but this is what you get. I've had to wrestle with my preference, which would be that we don't have political gerrymandering. But what I also know is that if we don't respond effectively, then this White House and Republican-controlled state governments all across the country, they will not stop, because they do not appear to believe in the idea of an inclusive, expansive democracy. They want to restrict it. And they're not that shy about saying so. And they do not see a problem in a minority of Americans being able to control the majority of legislatures and the White House and the courts, and to be able to run things in their interests. It doesn't bother them. To them, this is not a bug. This is a feature of the kind of democracy, quote unquote, that they would like to see in America. I think he is managing to connect dots there that are important about what the vision is, not just for a single political party, but for a country under the leadership of that party.
Exactly. And by the way, if somebody would have asked me a year ago to bet on whether or not Barack Obama would get in the middle of a fight about redistricting, I would have bet big money that he wouldn't. Because this is a man who really respected the norms of the presidency, really took seriously things like, I don't ever talk to justice about anything. They are independent of my control. Things like, I think it's really important how everything appears in the White House, and we won't do politics in the White House. For him to roll up his sleeves and say, let's go, to Gavin Newsom, that tells you how serious this is. It tells you that he is, in fact, breaking the glass and saying, to hell with the norms. We've got to fight this guy, because if we don't, we're going to continue down a road that we may not be able to get back on.
Assemblymember, I also imagine it makes you and your colleagues feel as though you have support and wind in your sails.
Oh, absolutely. President Obama speaking up makes a hell of a lot of a difference to me and to many others. But really, the wind has been in our sails already. The people of California are speaking incredibly clear in every community that I've been to, and every community many of my colleagues represent. And I think this November, they are going to send a resounding referendum to the Trump administration, letting them know that we will not allow the destruction of the foundations of our democracy, and we will not sit quiet in that moment because we're taking some sort of high road that doesn't exist anymore. When you're going to go low, we're going to meet you right there, and we're going to be ready to fight. And that's what this is all about.
Well, especially Assemblymember, because they're not pretending this is about anything other than protecting their own political interests. You had Donald Trump reacting, of course, very positively to the news about what happened in Texas, and then advocating for an end to mail-in ballots before saying, quote, if we do these two things, we will pick up 100 more seats and the crooked game of politics is over. I mean, I get that he cannot piece together that the beginning of what he's saying is in direct contradiction to the end of what he is saying there, but he's giving the game away.
No, and he said this when he was running. He said, if you elect me one more time, I'll fix it so good, we'll never have to worry about it. And that's because he lies, he cheats, and he steals. And that's been a character feature of his entire life. It's why so many of us were deeply concerned to put a person of that low moral fortitude in the White House. But in this moment, the American people have to step up. And I believe the American people are willing to step up. And I'm proud that California is going to be a major part of leading that resistance.
Can I just get a gut check from you, Senator, real quick? 100, does that sound like a made-up number?
Yeah. Well, most of his numbers are made up. Mm-hmm. He's consistent.
Yeah, okay. No, I was like, I'm not sure how we got to that number. Melanie, late last night, you had a California judge clearing the way for what we're seeing today, saying Republicans, quote, failed to meet their burden of establishing a basis for relief. Help me understand, does that mean then that the courts are going to say, go ahead, green light?
Yeah, I mean, what Assembly and legislative Republicans were trying to do was they were trying to throw sand in the gears any way they could before this advanced out of the legislature. So they were trying to say on sort of procedural grounds that this was moving too fast through the legislature. And what you saw from the California State Supreme Court was a pretty resounding no. And so, I mean, California Democrats, they cleared a major hurdle today in getting this out of the legislature. But I think we all need to be clear, and I respect that the Assembly member is very confident about how this ballot measure is going to play out. But the hard work for them is yet to come. I mean, they are in a very compressed time period, going to have to educate the voters about what is going on. They're going to have to raise a ton of money to outset what is going to be a ton of money coming in on the other side. And they are going to have to send this resounding message if this is a national fight, as they claim it to be. A squeaker is probably not going to send the message that they want. So not only do Democrats want to win this, they want to win this resoundingly, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on them for the 47 days before ballot drops. And that's quite a timeline for them to work under.
High stakes on a very tight timeline. California Assembly member Isaac Bryan and Melanie Mason, thank you both so much for starting us off.